They thought I was just another pushover homeowner they could bully and intimidate. The HOA board had been stealing from us for years. $500,000 vanished into thin air through fake invoices and phantom contractors. But here's what they didn't know. My wife doesn't work in HR like they assumed. She's an FBI special agent who specializes in financial fraud. And when she finally looked at those HOA books, let's just say the handcuffs came out real fast. My name is David Park, and 3 years ago, my wife Sarah and I bought our dream home in Riverside Estates, a gorgeous lakeside community just outside Atlanta. The house was everything we'd worked for: 5 bedrooms, lakefront property, a private dock, and enough space for our 2 kids to grow up in paradise. Sarah had just made senior special agent at the FBI after 12 years of climbing the ranks. I ran a successful marketing agency from home. Life was perfect. The HOA seemed normal enough at first. Monthly dues of $425, standard rules about landscaping and property maintenance. The neighborhood was immaculate. Every lawn perfectly manicured, homes freshly painted, a beautiful clubhouse with pool and tennis courts. Everything looked professional and well managed. The HOA board was run by 5 longtime residents. President Gerald Hawkins, a retired insurance executive who wore 3-piece suits to neighborhood meetings. Vice President Patricia Coleman, former real estate broker, always impeccably dressed. Treasurer Brian Foster, who'd owned an accounting firm for 30 years. Secretary Michelle Tang and board member Robert Jensen rounded out the group. They'd all lived in Riverside Estates since it was developed 15 years ago. They knew every rule, every bylaw, every inch of the community, and they ran it like their personal empire. But that first year, we had no problems. We paid our dues on time, we kept our property looking great, we attended the annual meeting, smiled and nodded during Gerald's 40-minute speech about maintaining property values and community standards. Sarah and I were busy with our lives. Our daughter Maya was 10, our son Lucas was 7. Sarah traveled frequently for work, 2 or 3 days a week minimum. When neighbors asked what she did, she'd give a vague smile and say, "Government contractor work," and change the subject. We'd learned early in our marriage that telling people she was FBI made things weird. People either got paranoid about their own minor infractions or wanted to treat her like a free crime-solving service for every suspicious thing their neighbor did. So we kept quiet. The neighbors assumed she had some boring desk job. They had no idea she spent her days taking down sophisticated fraud operations, Ponzi schemes, and white-collar criminals who thought they were too smart to get caught. Life in Riverside Estates was idyllic. Summer evenings on our dock watching the sunset, kids swimming in the lake, community barbecues, Maya learning to wakeboard, Lucas catching bass off our dock and releasing them with that huge, proud smile. This was why we worked so hard. This was the life we dreamed about. The community had 180 homes spread across a beautifully landscaped development. The lake formed the eastern border, with prime waterfront properties like ours commanding top dollar. A state-of-the-art clubhouse sat at the center, with a resort-style pool, fitness center, and event space. Walking trails wound through preserved woodland areas. Property values had increased 20% since the development opened. Most residents were professionals like us, young families climbing the corporate ladder, empty nesters downsizing from bigger houses, a handful of retirees. Everyone was friendly but respected boundaries, the perfect suburban balance. The HOA board held monthly meetings that almost nobody attended. Maybe 5 or 6 residents would show up besides the board members themselves. The annual budget meeting might get 30 people. Most homeowners just paid their dues and assumed the board was handling everything responsibly. Gerald Hawkins sent monthly newsletters on expensive cream paper with gold-embossed letterhead, updates about landscaping contracts, reminders about quiet hours, announcements about upcoming projects. He signed everyone with "Distinguished regards, Gerald M. Hawkins, President, Riverside Estates." The man was in love with his title. Looking back, there were red flags, small things that didn't quite add up. Gerald always drove brand new luxury cars, a different one every year, Mercedes, BMW, Audi. Patricia took 3 international vacations annually and casually mentioned her investment properties in Florida. Brian had recently renovated his entire 6,000 square foot home with the highest end finishes, sub-zero appliances, Italian marble, custom millwork throughout. But when you're living your life, raising kids, building your career, you don't connect those dots. You assume people have retirement savings, successful investments, inheritance money. These were expensive homes. Everyone had money. Our property had cost $890,000. We were comfortable, but we'd stretched our budget to afford it. We assumed the board members were just more financially successful retirees. Sarah's promotion meant leading a team of 8 agents on complex fraud investigations. More responsibility, more travel, but also more satisfaction. She was finally working the big cases she'd trained for her entire career. We found our rhythm. I handled school pickups and homework. Sarah called every night from whatever city she was in. We made it work. And then, 18 months after we moved in, everything changed. It started with a letter in our mailbox on a Tuesday morning in October. Official HOA letterhead. My name typed formally across the envelope. I opened it standing in my driveway. Dear Mr. Park, this correspondence serves as formal notification that your property is in violation of Community Covenant Section 12.4, Dock and Waterfront Structure Maintenance Standards. Upon inspection, your dock exhibits the following deficiencies: weathered wood surfaces, discoloration of support posts, inadequate staining/sealing, and algae accumulation on submerged structural components. You are required to remediate all violations within 30 calendar days of receipt. Failure to achieve full compliance will result in fines of $150 per day commencing on day 31. With distinguished regards, Gerald M. Hawkins, President, Riverside Estates. I read it 3 times. Our dock was 18 months old, built by the developer's recommended contractor before we even moved in. Yes, the wood had naturally weathered from sun and water exposure. That's what happens to outdoor wood. The posts had some algae near the water line, which is literally underwater and completely normal. I walked down to the lake to examine it more carefully. The dock was solid, safe, and looked identical to every other dock on the lake. Maybe the wood had taken a slight gray patina from the sun. Maybe there was some green tint on the underwater posts. But it was a dock on a lake. This was absurd. I called Sarah that evening. She was in Chicago working a case. They want you to do what? The disbelief in her voice was clear. Completely refinish the dock. Somehow remove algae from posts that are underwater? It's insane. The dock is brand new. I was sitting on it last weekend and it's perfect. I know. I'm gonna fight this. Want me to come home? I can wrap this up and... No, stay on your case. I can handle an overzealous HOA. I'll send them a response and sort this out. I had no idea what I was getting into. I sent a professional email to the HOA board the next morning. Dear board members, I received the violation notice regarding my dock. I respectfully disagree with this assessment. The dock is structurally sound, safe, and exhibits normal weathering consistent with all waterfront structures in the community. The violations mentioned are natural aging of outdoor wood and typical lake algae, both of which are unavoidable and present on docks throughout Riverside Estates. I request the board reconsider this notice. Sincerely, David Park. Gerald's response came within 2 hours. Mr. Park, the board does not reconsider violation notices. Community standards exist for all residents. Your property will comply or face daily fines. I suggest you consult the community covenants you agreed to upon purchase. Section 12.4 is unambiguous. You have 28 days remaining. With distinguished regards, Gerald M. Hawkins, President. The tone was condescending, dismissive, like I was a child who needed to be educated. I spent that evening reading every word of our HOA covenants, all 147 pages. Section 12.4 said, Waterfront structures must be, quote, maintained in good repair and appearance consistent with community aesthetic standards. That was it. Completely subjective language. No specific requirements about staining frequency or algae removal. Nothing about weathering being a violation. They were making this up. I decided to attend the next HOA board meeting. It was held the following Thursday evening at 7 p.m. in the clubhouse. When I walked in, the 5 board members sat at a long table at the front of the room. Maybe 8 other residents were scattered in chairs. The whole setup felt like a courtroom with the board as judges. Gerald looked annoyed that I'd shown up. I waited until homeowner comments at the end of the meeting. I stood and introduced myself. I received a violation notice about my dock. I've reviewed the covenants and I don't believe my dock violates any specific standard. I'd like to understand what exactly needs to be corrected and what the objective standard is. Gerald didn't even look up from his papers. Mr. Park, the board has made its determination. Your dock does not meet community standards. The violation notice outlines the required corrections. Next comment, please. But what specific standard? Next, comment, please. He cut me off, still not making eye contact. Patricia Coleman leaned forward with a patronizing smile. Mr. Park, we understand you're new to the community, but the board has managed these properties for 15 years. We know what standards need to be maintained. Trust our judgment. Trust their judgment. I left that meeting furious, but trying to stay rational. Sarah called as I drove home. How'd it go? They dismissed me like I was wasting their time, wouldn't explain what specific standard I'm violating. That's because there isn't one. It's subjective language they're interpreting however they want to. I could hear the analytical FBI agent in her voice. Document everything, every email, every letter, every conversation. If this escalates, you'll need a paper trail. It escalated. 2 weeks later, another letter arrived. This time it wasn't about the dock. Dear Mr. Park, your property is in violation of Section 8.2, Lawn and Landscape Maintenance. Your grass height exceeds the permitted maximum of 3.5 inches in multiple areas of your front yard. Additionally, your mailbox post exhibits minor weathering inconsistent with community standards. Remediate within 15 days or face fines of $100 per day. With distinguished regards, Gerald M. Hawkins, President. I measured my grass, 3 inches, well within limits. I examined my mailbox post. It was a standard black metal post installed by the builder. It looked identical to every other mailbox on our street. They were harassing me now. I hired a professional lawn service to measure and photograph my grass, 2.8 inches average. I took detailed photos of my mailbox and 15 other mailboxes in the neighborhood, all with the same slight weathering from sun and rain. I submitted everything to the board with a formal objection. Their response, your objection is noted and denied. Violations remain in effect. No explanation, no reasoning, just raw authority. The fine started. $150 per day for the dock, $100 per day for the lawn and mailbox. According to their calculations, I now owed $3,750. I wasn't paying it. This was extortion. Then came the certified letter, legal letterhead from Henderson and Associates, Attorneys at Law. Dear Mr. Park, this firm represents the Riverside Estates HOA. You are hereby notified that you have accumulated $3,750 in violation fines and have failed to remediate said violations despite multiple notices. If payment is not received within 10 days, the HOA will file a lien against your property and pursue legal action, including foreclosure proceedings. Foreclosure. They were threatening to take our house over weather-beaten wood. I called Sarah immediately. She was in Denver. They're threatening foreclosure, I said, my voice shaking. There was silence on the line. Then, forward me everything. Every letter, every email, every photo, everything.
Sarah, I know you're busy with cases. Forward me everything. Her voice had changed. This wasn't my wife anymore. This was Special Agent Chen. I'm coming home this weekend. We need to talk. That Friday night, Sarah arrived home at 11 p.m. She kissed the kids goodnight, they were already asleep, and then sat down at our dining room table with her laptop. "Show me everything," she said. I laid it all out. Every violation notice, every email exchange, every photo, the legal threat letter, the community covenants, the meeting minutes I'd obtained. Sarah read through it all in silence, her FBI training showing, methodical, thorough, emotionless, taking notes in her leather portfolio. After 2 hours, she looked up at me. "This is harassment, targeted harassment. The violations are fabricated or subjectively interpreted to the extreme." She tapped her pen on the table. "But that's not what's interesting." "What do you mean?" "David, I've investigated fraud for 12 years. I know what it looks like when people in power abuse that power, and I know what it looks like when people are hiding something." She pulled up a spreadsheet. "When did you say the monthly HOA dues are?" $425. "And how many homes?" 180. She typed numbers into her calculator. $76,500 a month, $918,000 a year. She looked at me. "For a community this size, that's high. Not crazy high, but elevated. Where's all that money going?" "Landscaping, pool maintenance, clubhouse, insurance, reserves." "Right, standard stuff." She pulled up the annual budget from the HOA website. According to their public budget, they spend about $680,000 annually on operating expenses. That leaves $238,000 going into reserves. Okay. So, over 15 years, the reserve fund should be massive, over $3 million, even accounting for occasional major expenses. She turned the laptop toward me. "Their disclosed reserve balance is $420,000. The number hung in the air between us. "Where's the other $2.5 million?" I asked. Sarah smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a predator who had just spotted prey. "That," she said, "is exactly what I intend to find out."
Sarah took Monday off work, completely off, which she never did. She spent the entire day at our dining room table, with 3 laptops, 2 phones, and stacks of documents spread across every surface. "What are you doing?" I asked, bringing her coffee around noon. "Research. The HOA is required by Georgia law to maintain financial records and make them available to homeowners upon request. I'm going to request them." "Will they actually give them to you?" She looked up with that FBI smile again. "They legally have to, and if they don't, that's a violation of state law, which gives me probable cause to dig deeper." She drafted an email that afternoon. It was professional, formal, and absolutely airtight legally. "Dear board members, pursuant to OCGA Section 44-3-224, I hereby request copies of the following HOA financial records for the past 5 years. All bank statements, all paid invoices and receipts, all contracts with vendors, all reserve fund transactions, complete general ledgers, all board meeting minutes, and copies of all insurance policies. Georgia law requires these records be provided within 10 business days. Please confirm receipt of this request. Sincerely, Sarah Park, homeowner." Gerald's response came the next morning. "Mrs. Park, the board is not required to provide such exhaustive documentation to individual homeowners. A summary financial statement is available on the website. That is sufficient. With distinguished regards, Gerald M. Hawkins, President." Sarah read it and laughed. Actually laughed. "He just made this so much easier." "What do you mean?" "He's refusing to provide legally required documents. That's a violation of state law." She was already typing. "Watch this." Her second email was different, more direct. "Mr. Hawkins, your response indicates a fundamental misunderstanding of Georgia HOA law. OCGA Section 44-3-224 is not optional. Homeowners have a statutory right to inspect and copy financial records. Your refusal is a violation of state law. I am providing you one additional opportunity to comply. If you continue to refuse, I will file a complaint with the Georgia Department of Law and pursue legal remedies. You have 5 business days. Respectfully, Sarah Park, homeowner. Gerald's response came the next morning. 5 business days passed. On day 6, Sarah made a phone call. I watched her put on her FBI voice. Calm, professional, absolutely authoritative. Yes, I need to file a complaint about an HOA in Georgia refusing to provide financial records required by state law. Yes, Riverside Estates HOA in Fulton County. The president, Gerald Hawkins, has refused multiple requests. She was on the phone for 45 minutes, providing documentation, answering questions, giving details. When she hung up, she looked satisfied. The state is opening an inquiry. They'll send an official letter to the board requiring compliance within 15 days or face penalties. Will that work? It'll get their attention, but David, she pulled out her FBI badge and set it on the table. I need to tell you something. I haven't just been researching as a concerned homeowner. What do you mean? I ran some basic background checks on the board members. Nothing invasive, just public records. And I found some interesting patterns. She opened a file on her laptop. Gerald Hawkins owned a small insurance company that went bankrupt 8 years ago. Creditors claimed he'd mismanaged funds. Never proven, never charged, but suspicious. Patricia Coleman lost her real estate license 5 years ago for commingling client funds. Brian Foster's accounting firm was sued twice for fraud. Both cases settled out of court with confidentiality agreements. I felt my stomach drop. They're criminals. They're people with histories of financial impropriety who are now in control of nearly $1 million a year in other people's money. She pulled up another screen. I also pulled permits and property records. Remember Brian's massive renovation? Yeah. Permitted value is $380,000. I know construction costs in Atlanta. That renovation was easily $600,000 or more. Where'd the extra money come from? He's supposed to be retired, living on a fixed income. The HOA funds. That's my hypothesis, but I need proof. She closed her laptop. The state inquiry will force them to produce financial records. Once I have those, I can analyze them. If there's fraud, I'll find it. Can you do that? I mean, isn't this a conflict of interest or something? Sarah smiled. I'm not investigating in my official capacity. I'm a concerned homeowner reviewing financial documents I have a legal right to see. If I happen to notice evidence of fraud, well, then I have an obligation to report it. 2 weeks later, a large envelope arrived from the HOA's attorney. Inside were 5 years of financial records. Sort of. Bank statements with transactions redacted. Invoices with vendor information blacked out. Contracts with entire pages missing. Meeting minutes with huge sections marked Executive Session Confidential. They technically complied with the state order while making the documents useless. Sarah spread them across our dining room table and laughed that predator laugh again. Oh, Gerald, you just made this so much worse for yourself. How? Everything's redacted. Exactly. Which means they're hiding something. And the specific things they redacted tell me exactly what they're hiding. She pointed to a bank statement. See this? They redacted the vendor name on a payment for $45,000 for landscape renovation. But they left the check number, and they left the date, and they left the amount. So now I know to look for landscape work that supposedly happened on that date for that amount. I can drive through the community and see if any landscape renovation actually occurred. I can pull permits to see if any major landscape work was permitted. I can cross-reference other payments around the same time. She was in her element now. This was what she did. Following money trails, finding patterns, connecting dots. For the next 2 weeks, Sarah barely slept. She created massive spreadsheets. She drove through Riverside Estates, photographing every common area. She pulled public records for every vendor name that wasn't redacted. She analyzed payment patterns and looked for anomalies.
and she found them. David, come look at this. It was 2 a.m. on a Saturday. I had fallen asleep on the couch while she worked. I stumbled over to the dining room table. Look at these payments. Every month for 5 years, there's a check to Riverside Property Management, LLC, for $8,000 to $12,000. That's $100,000 to $150,000 a year. Okay. But there is no Riverside Property Management, LLC. I searched every business database in Georgia. It doesn't exist. She pulled up another screen. But I ran the bank account number that cleared one of these checks through a law enforcement database. Want to know whose personal account it deposited into? Gerald's? Close. Patricia Coleman's. But here's the beautiful part. She co-owns that account with Gerald. I found the account opening documents through a financial institution Sabina network. Wait, you can do that? For a fraud investigation? Absolutely. I haven't opened an official case yet, but I can access certain databases to check if there's enough evidence to justify one. She showed me more spreadsheets. I found at least 7 fake vendor companies, all of them routing payments to accounts controlled by the board members. Over the past 5 years, I estimate they have stolen between $500,000 and $650,000. $500,000 stolen from our community, from families just trying to live their lives. What do we do now? I asked. Sarah closed her laptop. Now I open an official FBI investigation into HOA fraud and embezzlement. I bring this to my supervisor Monday morning. We get warrants. We get forensic accountants. We build an airtight case. How long will that take? 6 months, maybe 8. Federal fraud cases take time to build properly. And in the meantime, they're still trying to take our house. Sarah smiled. Oh, don't worry. I'm going to deal with that part first. Because here's the thing about bullies, David. They're really brave when they think they're powerful. But when they realize they've been caught... She pulled up an email and started typing. They fold like cheap cards.
Sarah's email was a masterpiece. Dear board members, my name is Special Agent Sarah Chen, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Financial Crimes Division. I am also a homeowner at Riverside Estates. I am writing to inform you that I have completed a preliminary analysis of HOA financial records obtained through my statutory rights as a homeowner. This analysis has revealed multiple irregularities consistent with embezzlement, fraud, and misappropriation of funds. These irregularities include payments to non-existent vendor companies, routing of HOA funds to personal accounts controlled by board members, falsified invoices, and inflation of service contracts. I am opening an official federal investigation effective immediately. I will be recommending that the FBI, in coordination with the Georgia Attorney General's office, pursue criminal charges. I strongly advise each board member to retain legal counsel. Additionally, I suggest you immediately cease any and all violation enforcement actions against my property, as they will be viewed as retaliatory conduct and witness intimidation in a federal investigation, which carries additional criminal penalties. You have 48 hours to respond. Special Agent Sarah Chen, FBI. She hit send at 9 a.m. on Monday morning. At 9:47 a.m., her phone rang. Hello? I watched her face. Completely neutral. FBI mode. Yes, this is Special Agent Chen. No, this is not a joke, Mr. Hawkins. I suggest you stop talking and listen very carefully. You have 2 options. Option 1, you cooperate fully, provide complete unredacted financial records, and resign from the board. Option 2, I execute search warrants on your homes and bank accounts, seize all financial records, and arrest all 5 board members. Choose now. Silence while Gerald talked. I don't care what your attorney says. I'm a federal agent investigating fraud. Your attorney can't stop this. More silence. You have until 5 p.m. Wednesday to provide unredacted records and submit resignation letters. After that, warrants will be issued. She hung up. Well, I asked. He's scared. Really scared. They'll crack. She was right.
Tuesday afternoon, a large box was delivered to our house. Inside were complete, unredacted financial records for 5 years. Every bank statement, every invoice, every contract, every meeting minute, and 5 signed resignation letters. Sarah spent Tuesday night and all day Wednesday going through everything with the meticulous attention of an FBI agent building a federal case. "It's worse than I thought," she said Wednesday evening. "They didn't just steal $500,000, they stole $680,000, and they were sloppy about it." She showed me the evidence: payments to contractors who didn't exist, invoices for work that was never done, landscaping bills showing $40,000 for projects that actually cost $8,000, with the contractor getting the real $8,000 and the board members pocketing the extra $32,000, equipment purchases that never happened, insurance payments that went into personal accounts. They got greedy and stupid. Classic fraud pattern. They started small, maybe skimming a few thousand here and there, but over time they got bolder, bigger amounts, more frequent. They thought no one was paying attention. No one was. No one except the one homeowner who happens to be a federal agent specializing in exactly this type of crime. Thursday morning, Sarah met with her FBI supervisor and 2 federal prosecutors. By Thursday afternoon, the investigation was officially opened. By Friday, forensic accountants were assigned. By the following Monday, federal grand jury subpoenas were issued. But Sarah wasn't done. "We need to call an emergency HOA meeting," she told me. Can we do that? According to the bylaws, any 10 homeowners can petition for an emergency meeting, start knocking on doors. I spent that evening talking to neighbors, explaining what had happened, showing them the evidence Sarah had uncovered. People were furious. Within 3 hours, I had signatures from 42 homeowners demanding an emergency meeting. The meeting was scheduled for the following Saturday at 2 p.m. at the clubhouse. Over 120 homeowners showed up. I had never seen that many people at an HOA meeting. The room was packed, standing room only. Sarah stood at the front and introduced herself. "For those who don't know me, I'm Sarah Park. I live at 874 Lakeview Drive. I'm also a special agent with the FBI." She let that sink in. "Your former HOA board has resigned. I'm going to explain why." For the next 45 minutes, she laid out the entire fraud scheme. She showed PowerPoint slides with redacted bank statements, fake invoices, and payment patterns. She explained how the board had systematically stolen from the community for years. The room was dead silent. Then came the anger. "They tried to foreclose on my house over a mailbox," someone shouted. "They fined me $5,000 for a fence that met every covenant requirement. They said we didn't have money for pool repairs, but they were stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars." Sarah let them vent. Then she held up her hand. "I understand your anger. Here's what happens next. The FBI investigation will take 6 to 8 months. We're pursuing federal criminal charges against all 5 former board members. The U.S. Attorney is also pursuing asset forfeiture, meaning we'll seize their houses, cars, and bank accounts to recover the stolen funds and return them to the HOA. "What about the violations they issued?" someone asked. "Any violation issued by the fraudulent board is void. You owe nothing. If you paid fines, the HOA will reimburse you from recovered funds." "What about the threats, the harassment?"
Sarah's expression hardened. That's being added to the charges. Abuse of authority, retaliation. They're looking at 10 to 15 years in federal prison, each. The room erupted in applause. But Sarah wasn't done. "This community needs a new board, an honest one. I'm nominating David Park as interim president to oversee the transition. He's the one who first noticed something was wrong and refused to be intimidated." More applause. I was elected unanimously. 3 months later, federal agents executed arrest warrants. I watched from my driveway as FBI vehicles pulled up to Gerald's house 4 doors down. Agents in FBI windbreakers. Gerald in handcuffs, looking 20 years older than he had at that board meeting where he dismissed me so condescendingly. Patricia was arrested at her home. Brian was arrested at a golf course. Michelle and Robert were arrested together at a restaurant.
All 5 were charged with federal wire fraud, embezzlement, mail fraud for the violation notices, and conspiracy. The indictment was 47 pages long. The news media covered it extensively. Luxury HOA board arrested in $680,000 embezzlement scheme. FBI agent discovers massive fraud in her own neighborhood. HOA corruption case leads to federal charges. Our community was famous for all the wrong reasons. But justice was coming.
The trial took place 14 months after the arrests. Federal prosecutors had built an airtight case. Forensic accountants traced every stolen dollar, bank records, emails, fake invoices, all of it presented to a jury. Sarah testified for 6 hours. Calm, professional, devastating. She walked the jury through every fake vendor, every inflated contract, every stolen payment. The defense attorneys tried to claim it was sloppy bookkeeping and accounting errors. The jury didn't buy it. Gerald Hawkins, guilty on all counts, sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. Patricia Coleman, guilty on all counts, sentenced to 10 years. Brian Foster, guilty on all counts, sentenced to 11 years. Michelle Tang, guilty on all counts, sentenced to 8 years. She cooperated and testified against the others. Robert Jensen, guilty on all counts, sentenced to 9 years. Asset forfeiture recovered $890,000. Total, the stolen funds plus growth in their investment accounts. The court ordered it all returned to Riverside Estates HOA. With the recovered funds, we repaid every homeowner who'd been illegally fined, $147,000. Completed deferred maintenance they'd claimed we couldn't afford, new pool equipment, clubhouse renovations, road repairs. Fully funded the reserve account to proper levels. Reduced monthly HOA dues from $425 to $295. The community was transformed in other ways too. We rewrote the HOA covenants completely. No more vague, subjective language that could be weaponized. Every rule now had clear, objective standards. Violation notices required photographic evidence and specific covenant citations. A 3-person review committee had to approve any fine over $100. Most importantly, we implemented mandatory financial transparency. Monthly financial reports posted online. Quarterly audits by an independent CPA. Any homeowner could request and receive complete financial records within 48 hours. Board members were now required to pass background checks. The new board I helped assemble was completely different from the old one. Younger, diverse, transparent. We held open forums every quarter where homeowners could ask anything. Our meetings went from 5 attendees to 40 to 50 regularly. The civil lawsuits came next. Several homeowners who'd been harassed sued the former board members personally. One family who'd been forced to spend $15,000 fighting a bogus foreclosure received a $200,000 settlement. Another homeowner who'd been fined into bankruptcy got $180,000. Gerald Hawkins lost everything. His house was seized and sold. His luxury cars, gone. His retirement accounts, liquidated to pay victims. He went to prison 68 years old and would be 80 when he got out, if he survived. Patricia Coleman's investment properties were seized. Her real estate empire crumbled. She'd spent years building wealth through her legitimate business, then destroyed it all by stealing from homeowners. Brian Foster's beautiful renovation, the one funded with stolen HOA money, was seized. The court sold his house and distributed the proceeds to victims. Everything he'd built with stolen funds was stripped away. For me personally, the vindication was overwhelming. Remember that dock violation that started this whole thing? I never fixed it. The weathered wood is still there. The algae still grows on the underwater posts because it's a normal, functional dock and there was never anything wrong with it. My overgrown lawn that they measured at over 3.5 inches when it was actually 2.8 inches, I now cut it whenever I feel like it, knowing the rules are clear and fairly enforced. My mailbox with weathering inconsistent with community standards, still there, still weathered, still identical to every other mailbox in the neighborhood.
All those violation notices, all that harassment, all those threats of foreclosure, it was never about community standards. It was about control, about power, about intimidating someone who might ask questions. They chose the wrong person to intimidate. Sarah got a commendation from the FBI director for the investigation. It became a case study at Quantico for how financial fraud operates in unexpected places. She's now a senior supervisory special agent running a task force on HOA and condo association fraud. Apparently, this is way more common than anyone realized. She's helped open investigations in 12 other states. Dozens of corrupt HOA boards have been exposed. Millions in stolen funds recovered. Our kids think their mom is a superhero, and honestly, she kind of is. Maya, now 12, did her school project on white-collar crime and ethics. She interviewed Sarah and presented the Riverside Estates case to her class. Got an A+. Lucas, now 9, tells everyone his mom arrests bad guys who steal money. He's not wrong. As for our life in Riverside Estates, it's finally the dream we thought we were buying. The community pools our resources properly now. We've upgraded facilities, improved landscaping, and built a genuine sense of community. Last summer, we had a massive block party on the lakefront. Over 200 people showed up. Live music, food trucks, kids playing in the lake. Sarah and I sat on our dock at sunset, watching our kids swim, and I thought about how close we came to losing all of this. Not because we did anything wrong, but because we happened to be the family that wouldn't back down. The lesson here isn't just about crooked HOA boards, although clearly they exist. It's about standing up to bullies who abuse power. It's about the importance of transparency and accountability. It's about not accepting "because I said so" as an answer when someone in authority is overstepping. And it's about the beautiful coincidence that sometimes, just sometimes, the person the bullies choose to target turns out to be exactly the wrong person. Gerald Hawkins thought he was threatening a helpless homeowner with a wife who worked some boring government job. Instead, he threatened a federal agent who specializes in catching people exactly like him. I still think about that moment when Sarah sent that email revealing who she really was. The moment Gerald realized he hadn't been intimidating a pushover, he'd been confessing his crimes to an FBI special agent. I wish I could have seen his face. The day the FBI arrested Gerald, I was standing in my driveway watching. As they led him past in handcuffs, he looked at me, really looked at me for the first time. And I smiled. Not a friendly smile, not a gloating smile. Just the smile of someone who knows that justice, even when it takes time, eventually catches up with those who abuse their power. He looked away first. Final thoughts. Our HOA now operates the way HOAs are supposed to, managing common areas, maintaining property values, and serving the homeowners who fund it, not as a personal fiefdom for retirees on a power trip. If you're dealing with an HOA that seems corrupt, document everything. Request financial records. It's your legal right. Ask questions. Push back on vague rules and subjective enforcement. And if you're really lucky, maybe you're married to someone who knows exactly how to take down white-collar criminals. We still live at 847 Lakeview Drive. Our dock is still weathered, our mailbox still has that slight patina, and I couldn't be happier. Because now when I sit on that dock watching the sunset, I'm not worrying about violation notices or foreclosure threats. I'm just enjoying the life we worked so hard to build. The life no one will ever take from us again. If you enjoyed this story of HOA justice, please hit that like button and subscribe for more satisfying tales of malicious compliance and revenge. And if you have your own HOA horror story, drop it in the comments below. I read every single one. Who knows, maybe your story will be featured next. Thanks for watching, and remember, always read your HOA covenants carefully. You never know when you might need to use them against the people who wrote them.